All right, let's have some fun with drill. So I've already started up my VirtualBox here with my Hortonworks Docker Sandbox instance running. And before we can actually play with drill, we need to get some data sources in there to work with. So what we're going to do is get our MongoDB instance up and running again and re-import that MovieLens movie data. And then we'll also set up a Hive database with the actual movie ratings, and then we'll use drill to tie them together. So open up your handy dandy web browser and let's log into Ambari like we always do. And I'm going to log in as admin just because, well, why not? Okay, so if you actually follow the previous section's instructions carefully, you shut down MongoDB when we were done and dropped the actual database we were working with. So let's go ahead and spin that back up. Let's go back to the MongoDB service tab here. And let's start that guy back up, if it's not already started for you. Should come up pretty quickly. Cool. All right, and while we're in here, let's go to Hive. So I'm going to go to the Hive view here. And let's import our ratings data into Hive. So let's start by creating a database for it to live in instead of just the usual default database. So for my query, I'm going to type in create database MovieLens and execute that. You'd think that would come back quicker, wouldn't you? But give it a second. There we go. So now if I refresh the Database Explorer, I should see my MovieLens database. Cool. And let's go ahead and upload some data into it. So I'm going to click on Upload Table. We've done this a few times before in the course. We will stick with a CSV, but instead of commas, we're going to use tabs as our delimiter because that's the format of the MovieLens ratings data file. That happens to be ASCII value 9. We are going to select from a local file, so let's go ahead and navigate to wherever we downloaded the MovieLens dataset to originally. And again, if you need to get that again, you can just head over to grouplens.org to get your own copy of the ML100K dataset. U.data is where the actual ratings data lives. Let's import this into the MovieLens database we just created. Org format's fine. We're going to name this table ratings because this is the actual movie ratings data, and the first column is the user underscore ID. Second column is the movie underscore ID. Third column is rating. And the fourth column is the time of that rating measured in epoch seconds. So with that, let's go ahead and upload that guy into Hive. All right, so now if we go back to the Hive dashboard here, we should be able to click into MovieLens, see our ratings table, do a little preview of it, make sure it's in there. Sure enough, it is. So just to recap where we are right now, we have MongoDB running, but there's no data in it yet, and we have a Hive database named MovieLens, into which we've imported a ratings table that contains the actual ratings from the MovieLens 100K dataset. So the next thing we need to do is actually get some data in our MongoDB instance, so let's log into that through SSH and PuTTY on Windows, just like we've done a million times in this course. Maria underscore dev. And let's su to root because we are going to be installing stuff, so we may as well not worry about permissions, right? Okay, so if we do an ls, if you followed along in the previous section, you should still have a mongospark.py script that we wrote earlier to import data into MongoDB, and you should still have the ML100K users data file in HDFS. If you want to double check, you can go to the files view back in Ambari here. Navigate to user Maria dev ML100K, and there you should have a u.user file in there. Okay, if you have other stuff in there too, that's fine, but make sure you have u.user. If you don't, go ahead and use the upload tool to take care of that right now. So this script again will actually use Apache Spark integrated with MongoDB to import data from HDFS and get that user's data file out of HDFS and into MongoDB. First thing we need to do, however, is remind our little sandbox here that we want to use Spark version 2 because that's what that script is written for. So we're going to say export Spark underscore major underscore version equals 2. And then we will actually kick off that script with spark dash submit dash dash packages org.mongodb.spark colon mongo dash spark connector underscore 2.11 colon 2.0.0 Mongo spark.py. Let me double check that. Looks right to me. Again, if you're using a newer version of Scala than 2.11 or a newer version of Spark than 2.0, you'll probably want to change those numbers there accordingly. So let's go ahead and kick that off. All right, and let's scroll up, make sure that actually worked. Yep, sure enough, it wrote in the user's data and read it back from MongoDB, and you can see that this is what our new MongoDB table looks like. So again, we have a MovieLens database in MongoDB with a collection called users that has ages, genders, occupations, user IDs, and zip codes. So way cool. All right. So now we have the data in place that we want to integrate with Drill. All we need to do now is actually install Drill, and that's actually pretty easy to do. Now there actually is not a working Drill Ambari connector that I could find, but it's okay because it's actually pretty easy to install Drill without Ambari. So first thing we need to do is get a URL for downloading Drill itself. So to do that, let's just head over to drill.apache.org. And click on the handy dandy download button. We want the latest version, whatever it might be. Find an Apache mirror, and this should give us some URLs. So the one it's suggesting is this one up top. What I'm going to do is highlight that and copy it to my clipboard. So I'm just hitting Control-C in Windows here. And now if I go back to my terminal prompt here, I can just say wget, and then right-click to paste that link in, and that should download the Apache Drill package for me. And we'll give that a couple of minutes to come down. Right, so that took more than a couple of minutes, but hey, it's finally here. So now we just need to uncompress it. Now let's, right now, where am I? I'm in the home directory of MariaDev. So I'm just going to install Drill in here for now, because we're just kind of messing around. In a real production setting, obviously, well, first of all, you wouldn't just be in a sandbox like we are now, but you'd also want to install this someplace more permanent, like under the root directory or user local or something like that. But for now, let's just uncompress it in here. So let's do an ls. And you can see that the Apache Drill 1.9.0 tar.gz file got downloaded successfully. Depending on when you're watching this course, there might be a newer version available, so those numbers might be different for you. But this is a gzipped tar archive that we need to uncompress. So to do that, we just type in tar-xvf, Apache Drill, whatever the number is that you downloaded, .tar.gz, and that should expand it all for us. So let's take a look. We now have an Apache Drill 190 directory I can cd into, and let's see what's in here. So we have a bin directory that contains the main scripts we need, configuration and whatnot, and that's all there is to installing Drill, really. Now the only trick here is that when we start Drill, we need to actually specify a different port than the default for running its web interface on. So we're gonna, in the next lecture, actually use Drill by just using a web UI, just kind of like we do with Ambari. So that makes things nice and pretty and easy to use. But to do so, we need to use a port that's actually accessible outside of our sandbox here. And unfortunately, it's not as simple as just opening up a port on the VirtualBox. It turns out that the Hortonworks sandbox is actually running inside of what we call a Docker container, which is in turn is running within VirtualBox. So we kind of have a virtual machine inside of a virtual machine, and punching access to the ports that we need through both layers is really a pain in the butt. So I'm just not going to go there. Instead, I'm going to configure Drill to run on a port that I know is open but unused at the time. So to do that, all we have to do is type in bin/drillbit.sh start. So that's telling Drill to start itself and run all of its servers. And now to tell it what port to run its web interface on, I'm going to type in -D, no space after that, drill.exec.http.port equals 8765. And that's it. Drill's running. So now I can go back to my web browser here and pull up 127.0.0.1:8765. That's the port I just specified, and we should see the Drill UI. Cool. That wasn't too hard, right? So we actually have Drill installed and up and running right now. There is one more thing we need to take care of, though. We need to actually connect it to our instances of MongoDB and Hive before we can actually use them within Drill. So to do that, what we're going to do is hit the Storage tab here. And you can see that for me, Hive and Mongo are already enabled. For you, they might be down here under Disabled Storage Plugins still. So if that's the case, go ahead and hit the Enable button next to Hive and Mongo to bring those both up. And once you have both Hive and Mongo in the enabled storage plugins list, alongside with CEP and DFS, which allow access to JSON files on the local file system or the HDFS file system, the only thing we need to do is hit Update next to the Hive plugin. And what you need to do is change the Metastore URL to this, thrift://localhost.9083. Now, by default, you should just see two quotes there with nothing in between them. What I want you to do is edit this to put thrift://localhost:9083, just to tell Drill that Hive can be found running on the localhost on that port, which is the default port that it's set up for. When you're done with that, hit Update, and you can go back. Mongo's settings will actually work by default out of the gate, so there's nothing you need to do. If you want to peek at those settings, though, you can click Update there, and you can see that if you wanted to connect to a different MongoDB instance that wasn't running on your local host on port 270117, you could change that here. So you can actually connect to any MongoDB instance that your computer has access to very easily just by changing that one setting. So cool, and that's pretty much it. So now we're ready to drill. Let's go to the Query tab, and in our next lecture, let's actually run some queries and play with it.